This is the Free Zone Communique. I'm your host, Matt Jordan, bringing hope to victims trapped behind the wire in blue cities. Today, we have a huge guest. I'll be bringing a famous author on very shortly. But real quick, I wanted to mention something I've noticed in the last couple of days. Uh, the liberals, the ones who loved Elon Musk and Tesla and electric cars, because they didn't understand how stupid, dirty, and indisposable they are, now hate them because Elon doesn't share their worldview in terms of politics and economics. So now the Tesla is automatically a bad car. At the same time, we have Donald Trump buying one on the White House lawn. Obviously, he thinks, and he's probably right, all the people who know Teslas are worthless, dirty, never going to be as green as my Ram 2500 V8 are now going to buy Teslas. Well, some of them will. Some of them will be that dumb. Teslas are still junk. But if you still believe the propaganda that the green scammers put out, they're still the same car that the liberals loved 6 months ago. So this is the kind of silly nonsense that makes political discourse so difficult in this country. People are thinking with their asses, not with their minds, not with logic, not with reason. I'll come back and treat the Tesla story again in a little more detail and probably bring back a lot of the facts and figures that I've brought out before that people don't understand. In the meantime, we have a great show today, so enjoy.
This is the Free Zone Communiqué, transmitting from Virginia's unoccupied sector. If you think smart cities, DEI, censorship, government intrusion, bug paste, and other left-wing nonsense are no longer a possibility, think again. We've won one election with slim majorities. Our work to rebuild a free and sane America has just begun.
Joining us now is a famous author from England. You may know him as J.C. Maetis. He's the author of a book I just started reading, and I'm really enjoying, the Vienna Writers Circle. Highly recommend that book. But he's also written under the name John Matthews. That's your actual name, right, John?
That's right. Yes, I've been writing. I wrote numerous books for many years under John Matthews.
Yeah.
And the change to J.C. Maetis was my father's original Jewish name, and I thought, given that this was a Holocaust-related story, I thought, well, I'll do it as a sort of tribute to him. So there we are. I didn't change my name, but it was, yes, so reverted back to his original name.
Yeah. Anyway, and it's I saw some titles today that I'm going to have to pick up because I do like thrillers, by the way.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick up Past Imperfect, Ascension Day, and The Last Witness. Those are going to be my next three books, I think.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, those are a series, right?
Well, they were. I had four. I had a two-book contract, which was Past Imperfect and The Last Witness. And Past Imperfect sold so well that I then did another two books, and that was The Shadow Chaser and Ascension Day. And then I wrote The Prophecy, which was published by another publisher. Those were all with Random House Penguin and did very well, Past Imperfect in particular.
So I'm sure you had the standard writer experience. You write a book and hand it to somebody and make $1 million, right?
Oh, well, it actually had its ups and downs. Past Imperfect did really, really well. I mean, the reason I'd written two books when I was a lot younger, and when I was in my mid-20s, And I lived in Spain and I was publishing a magazine there. It was a Homes and Gardens type magazine. And what happened is well, to cut a long story short, I was owed a lot of money by advertisers, and in the end, the magazine wasn't functioning. So I came back to England, left it with and I wrote Past Imperfect because we'd left the magazine for sale and the lawyer kept phoning and he said, well, every time I spoke to him, he said, oh, well, we won't get this much, we'll get this much, and it kept going down. And in the end, it looked like I was going to get nothing for this magazine. And so there I was 40 years old, I had a 10-year-old son and no money. And so I thought, well,
better get scribbling.
I thought what I'll do is I'll write this book and that will be my house deposit. So I had a target of about £25,000. And I thought, as long as I don't touch that money, I write. So I wrote that book, Past Imperfect, in my spare time while I was an editor at a magazine in London. And so there I was, I had a full day editing, but I was waking up at 5 in the morning, writing for 3 hours. It took me 18 months to write that book. And that's when I got the agent Anthony Shield, who represented Captain Cookson, and he thought he could sell it. Anyway, it took a year later, a lot of rewriting, got it sold. But I did very well with it. I did a lot better than the 25,000. I mean, I was a bit embarrassed actually how much money it earned in the end. It wasn't $1 million, but it was about a third of the way there, literally.
Nice.
Not through the English publishers, but they didn't sell in America, but it sold in Germany and Italy, and the German was particularly good. It sold actually 250,000 copies in Germany, and that year it outsold John Grisham in Germany, which was fantastic. Yeah,
I've heard it. I've heard it compared to other famous thriller authors by reviewers. I was reading that today.
Yeah, it's a very unusual book. I mean, I think America should have bought it because it had elements of The Sixth Sense. It was like a murder mystery mixed with elements of The Sixth Sense. And but I think in a way, and it's strange, American publishers felt it was almost too advanced and extreme for them, which is unusual because usually the American market with Stephen King and
Yeah.
And I think they regretted it later. I think they didn't think it would sell that well. When they saw it selling very well in England, it was almost too late. But there we go.
Well, maybe that changes today. We'll see.
Yes.
me and my 80,000 viewers. So you've traveled all over the world. You lived all over the world.
I've lived in Vancouver and Spain and traveled through America, but didn't sort of stay there. We took a train all the way through America from Vancouver all the way down the coast and then up to New Orleans and New York. And
that sounds like fun. Where in Spain did you live?
In Palma de Mallorca.
Of course. Where else?
Yeah, it's a very popular sort of holiday island.
Yeah.
There's quite a big British community there, and yes, that's where I lived for 12 years.
The best pubs in the Med. The best British pubs are in Palma. I've been there many times.
Oh, right. Yes, I mean, it's like the Hawaii of Europe. That's their popular destination.
Yeah. Now, when I was there, it looked a lot different. My two big haunts, I was in the Navy, so my big haunts were Malaga, and of course you would go over to Torremolinos all the time way back when, and the Palma, Mallorca. We would go over to Magaluf. That's where we spent most of our time.
Yeah, Magaluf was an up and coming resort in the 60s, and then it got overbuilt but it's changed a lot. I mean, the magazine that I ran actually did a lot of good for the island because it was a sort of very much a bucket and spade cheap destination, and it became through the magazine actually quite posh. I mean, it's now got a very, I think Michael Douglas had a home on the West Coast. All of that happened while I had the magazine. I was there, and yes, it became a Richard Branson's got a hotel there. It's sort of it's not a sort of cheap destination. It's got its cheap resorts still, but it's got its very, very, posh side as well.
Yeah. Torremolinos, when we were going there on a regular basis, you
Right.
would be up and we would party up in the San Miguel district.
Yeah, yeah.
And then down the hill a little bit, you had the whole side of that little mountain was Franco's resort, Franco's retreat.
Oh, right.
And then you had the little beach shops. And I would go down there every morning for breakfast. I go down by myself. I would eat an English breakfast on the beach. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but now we went back, my wife and I went back on our maybe our 30th anniversary, something like that, a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
years back. There, that whole hill is now nothing but giant high rises
I
and
know.
condos. Um, the beach shops are gone. It's still fun, kind of.
I know, but it's done. They've done the same in Mallorca. They've spoiled a lot of the best resorts. You used to have nice coves there with green hills each side, and
Yeah,
the cafe. And now it's just apartment buildings and villas all the way down. It's sort of a concreted up.
right, right.
So
That
it's
simplistic,
overkill.
that simplistic beachy feel
Yeah, yeah,
has been replaced by Miami Beach, which
yeah,
is just to me is awful. Miami Beach is awful.
yeah,
Those kinds of resorts. If I want a crowd, I can just go down to Philadelphia and hang out there. But yeah, so by the way, and not for nothing, if you know of any agents who publish political nonfiction, send me
right.
their name.
Okay.
I did self-publish a book. It was a terrible experience. All the editing was my own. Never edit your own work. That's like doing surgery on the back of your own
Yeah.
head.
Okay.
And and I said I'm not going to write another book. I can outline a book overnight, but I'm not going to write another one until I have an agent, until I know of a good agent
Yeah.
that,
The thing is that for agents, it's very difficult to get an agent as well. I mean, I've actually, um, I've had some good agents, and I've had agents that left me in the lurch, and I've ended up selling them myself.
yeah,
So, but again, it's sort of yeah, it's very difficult to get a publisher. It's difficult to get an agent. I mean, strangely enough, my arrival on Substack came through finding an agent for, and I did actually write a lot of the articles that you now see on Substack, which concern the Middle East and Israel, Palestine, were actually part of a book. So I'd had a diversion. I went from writing thrillers, and I thought, well, okay, I'm going to write a factual book because there were so many things about the Middle East and Israel, Palestine that I felt were wrong. So I put it into this book, and there was one particular agent that I'd had contact with on Twitter years ago at the time that Jeremy Corbyn there was a threat that he was going to get into power. And this particular agent said, if Jeremy Corbyn gets in, I'm off. I'm leaving the UK. Now he happens to be J.K. Rowling's agent, and he's Jewish, but he really was sort of threatened by this. So when I'd finished this book about it, and I thought, well, who would like that? And I thought of him, Neil Blair's name. And I thought, well, I'll send it to Neil and see what he thinks. Now he's not agenting anymore. There's others who work under him,
right.
but he literally read it in a couple of days, passed it on to another guy at the agency, and he said, "This is fantastic." And I thought, "Oh, great," And he says, "But we're going to have real trouble selling it because it's such a controversial topic that it's actually made it more difficult to get published as Jewish writers, and particularly if it discusses Israel on October 7th." So
When
what
did publishers get so gutless?
I know, I know.
It used to be, wow, this will create a sensation. Let's get it out there as quickly as we can. Now it's like, oh no, we don't want to offend anyone.
So
You
what he
know?
said to me, he said, "Look," he said, but he said this would be ideal for Substack, and he said, it's separate themes, all the way through. So, but the thing is, I write a fresh article, and then there's one from the book, and so, and then I'm actually writing two fresh ones because it's a comedy spoof as well. I didn't know I could do it because I'm writing two or three articles a week. But it's building up nicely. I only started in January, and I've got almost I've got 930 subscribers already, so that's not bad.
Wow, that's good.
But
That's good. I've been trying to break the 3,000 nut for a long time. It's killing me. Substack is a great vehicle,
yeah.
but I haven't figured out the monetization and the growth yet. Most of my people came over with me from my old WordPress days.
Oh, right.
And I get 3 a month and 1 a month and 5 a month join.
Yeah.
But to get that, I'm waiting for that exponential, enough people have seen it and enough people have shared it, so it
Yeah.
starts growing in branches, not one little vine.
Yeah. No, I
But
mean,
go
it's
ahead.
going well, but it's mainly free subscribers. I haven't, there's a few that have paid. I haven't asked anyone to pay, but I've had a few got paid. But yeah, it's 925 I'm up to, which
Very good.
since January the 10th, which was pretty good for that time.
And you're serializing that book idea about the Middle East, or you're actually still going to
Well,
write the book?
no, well, what's happened? He said it won't harm selling it. He said that the fact that I built up an audience on Substack, he thinks will make it easier to sell the book. But he's meanwhile trying. But of course, as I'm covering out extra things, I'm getting extra things that I can actually add to the book. So it will actually, yeah, it could actually, when it finally gets published, be a bigger book. But I think I covered a lot of the, when he mentioned the controversy with Jewish authors and particularly Israeli-linked authors, that gave me the idea for virtual book burning, which was an article I wrote about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and that covers the whole issue of how and why it's more difficult to get published for Jewish authors now.
And you did mention when we were talking pre-show that you have spent a lot of time talking about the Middle East. And obviously the last 2 years have been a royal shit show down there.
Yeah.
I'm amazed when events like this happen, and a lot of people are going to freak out that I even say this, but it's amazing when things like this happen, where the anti-Semitism suddenly emerges.
I know.
In this country, it's uniformly on the left.
Yeah.
The people on the right don't. They're thinking, well, we have an ally, and somebody just attacked our ally. End of story. There's no
Yeah.
complication here.
That's the same here.
And now you have the people on the left are going crazy. I shouldn't have said that because it kind of names her, but she was following what the last time Gaza became a problem. We're talking maybe 10, 15 years ago when they were shooting rockets. Less
Yeah,
than that, but
2014.
firing
Yeah.
rockets, and Israel went in, bam, just squashed all the rocket sites.
Yeah.
And of course, the left went crazy back then. And she's freaking out, and she starts quoting a man named David Duke. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, he was linked to the Ku Klux Klan, wasn't he? I think he was.
Correct.
Yeah.
He was the only Klan member that we know of in modern history to run
Okay.
for president. He was a rabid racist, and the kids were quoting him. And I started saying, "Do you people know who you're talking about?"
Yeah.
You know, I guarantee you, he won't like you any more than he does Jewish people or black people, or uh, and the funny alliance between people like that and Palestinian terrorists.
I know.
It's strange.
It's an odd thing. I mean, I wrote about this at length in an article I did. This was about a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, called "The Shifting Sands of the Left Wing." And actually, the left wing used to be very much on Israel's side. I mean, I remember, there was my best friend, his neighbor, was at university with him, and he was going off for the summer to work in a kibbutz.
Right.
And he was at, I think it was a Kiel University. And, now those same university students, they'd be out the front of the Israeli embassy waving flags or in demos in London. But then, it was very much the case they were in support of Israel because, of course, then you had Israel was the enemy was not just the Palestinians, but you had the Egyptians, the Jordanians, Syria. You had all of the Arab forces against them. So you had Arab forces representing, 200 million people against, a small group of, sort of Latter-day Jews trying to form Israel, who at that stage numbered, 2 million? So, the thing is, it was a real David and Goliath thing. Israel was definitely the David. It wasn't until the 67 war when they won it within 6 days, against all these Arabs, that they thought, maybe Israel's not as, and it was only because they battled it so ingeniously with that war. They planned it so tactfully. But now there's sort of all the excuses come back. They only won it because they were backed by the Americans, and America actually stayed on the sidelines a bit. I mean, they didn't want to get into the Russians were supplying arms to the Arabs, and so it has changed. And I talked about this change and how and why it came about, but I'm still stuck in the old correct days of what the left wing used to support with Israel, because today's propaganda against Israel just makes no sense.
Right. You just took the words right out of my mouth. It's the mindless, emotionless propaganda that's just cranked out by the bushel through a fire hose.
Yeah.
And that's all the people who just get their news, say, from MSNBC. That's all they know. That Israel is carrying out genocide. I guarantee you, if Israel wanted to do genocide, there would be no Palestinians left already.
I know.
And if you trace the timeline from 48 till now,
yeah,
every single news cycle, every single magazine article, all of it, Israel always, except for one time, always retaliated for attacks. They didn't initiate attacks. In 67, Nasser blew off his fat mouth and said, we're going to wipe out Israel. And they had armies massed on all the borders. So they said, well, no, we're not going to wait for it to happen. We're just going to stop it.
Yeah.
And then in 73, when the same thing started to happen, Golda Meir was thinking, we got to go. And of all people, Moshe Dayan said, no, don't go yet. They won't forgive us. And he was right. Kissinger contacted her and said, if you attack first, we don't support you. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So they had to wait and get punched in the face on purpose.
Yeah.
And then they won again.
But it was a bit of a close call with the Yom Kippur.
It was.
A bit more risky. I mean, it's such a small country at one point, it's very narrow. It's only sort of 40 miles wide at one point. And so, you can cut the country in two with an organized army. But yes, I mean, they face this terrible thing with terrorism, and why the left back them, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of odd. I mean, I did bring up the point that how would we've had some terrible terrorist attacks here, as you have in the States.
Mm-hmm.
We had 7/7 where there was organized blowing up of buses, tube trains, and I think there's 52 people killed in the day. We've had others since. We had the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester with a bomber.
Yeah.
23 young people killed. And I brought up the point. I said, how would how would the young students and people marchers, and how would they feel if straight after the Ariana Grande concert bombing, which was linked, he was linked to Al Qaeda, if they saw demonstrations on the news in Israel of people supporting the bomber and Al Qaeda, it would have just been disgusting. You
They'd
know,
have been blind with fury if that had happened. The same
yeah,
people.
yeah. It's just, they don't seem to sort of get and if they come out with this standard thing of denying the atrocities. Oh, there's no, what's his name, Jonathan Cook and Asa Winstanley come out with a regular thing. Oh, there's no proof that Hamas committed atrocities on October 7th. They
Oh
actually
my God.
they filmed it with a GoPro camera. So the level of denial and lies is just incredible.
But you are not a Zionism neophyte. You're not new to uh, the causes of Judaism or Israel. Um, when did the Vienna Writers Circle come out? When did you publish that?
That came out just over 2 years ago. Yeah.
Uh, you do something in that book. When I think about it, I try to do it. I don't always think about it, but I'd like to start with an offbeat, a beginning that hits you in the head and draws you in.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And you do that really well in Vienna Writers Circle.
Thank you.
That I really I can't recommend this book enough, and I can't wait to get back to it. But were you going for that when you first sat down to tell your story? Were you looking for that punch opening?
Um, yeah, it's, I mean, I wanted a dramatic opening. I mean, I'd read the Tattooist of Auschwitz. I read years ago Schindler's List, or started off with Schindler's Ark. Um, and in fact, the agents, when they were pushing the book, they were saying, um, they were describing it as Tattooist of Auschwitz meets Schindler's. Well, actually, the other way around. Schindler's meets the Tattooist of Auschwitz, because, of course, Tattooist of Auschwitz is set totally in a death camp. And
Right.
I thought, well, a lot of it was about how to avoid going to a death camp. By the time you got to the death camp, it was almost game over. So I wanted a book that had these two elements and of course you've got this shock start, and the yes, I mean, and then you get into the book and you think, well, hold it, somebody's gone to a death camp, which one, who, and but I wanted to show all sides of the conflict. I mean, as you get into the book, there's a lot. I won't spoil it because I might sort of give things away,
Right.
but
Yeah. Don't do that. Yeah.
no, no. But it shows actually there was a lot of sympathetic characters as well. In this book, not all the Austrians were against the Jews by any means, and there was some help there. So you see all of this, and it wasn't just the Jews; it was the Gypsies and the gays, and and the communists, and so I wanted, and also mixed race. I mean, if you're half Jewish as I am, I mean, how safe are you? In the end, you probably weren't safe at all. This is a thing. Even
Yeah.
if you had,
What a crazy feeling that would be. Your main character is in that situation,
yes, I try.
and that's another thing. When I've read a lot of books about the Holocaust,
Okay.
and there's a lot of great authors out there. Most of them, like you said, they do tend to concentrate on the camp experience, and sometimes they talk a little bit of biography, to
Yeah.
give you a flavor of who you're talking about. But when it comes to life in Vienna, and this man trying to continue to live his life
Yeah. Yeah.
despite the Anschluss, you have this first person eyewitness quality to the writing.
Oh, thanks.
Is that your family experience? Do you know people? Did you spend time with people who went through all this?
No, I mean, I'm quite good at sort of putting myself in the position of how would I feel if I was there? What would, and because I write thrillers, I didn't want to, I was a bit nervous writing a Holocaust related book because I thought, well, where's the pace? Where's the thrill? They're either, not in a death camp or they're in a death camp, where's the thrill? So what I did is my father's family came from Lithuania. Now, Lithuania, um, yes, I mean, they were invaded. I mean, my father left 1919, sort of way before Hitler. But a lot of his extended family stayed there, and a lot of them didn't survive. 90 the death rate there was 90% of the Jews perished in Lithuania. It was terrible. But I picked Austria because what happened is, and this came actually you get these anti-Semites online who'll make excuses. There's always an excuse. It's always this one's fault or that one's fault. And in the end they blame the Jews. With Hitler, one of the most common things is, oh, why didn't they leave? Why couldn't they get out? What's wrong with them? They had all this time to just leave, And they'd even sort of said, oh, the Jewish agencies, they were offered an amount of money by Hitler to move them and they refused, sort of almost blaming Jewish agencies for the Jews perishing. And when I looked it up, I discovered that the amount that Hitler was asking for was to get all the Jews out. It was the same amount of the whole balance of payments of the UK at the time. So you're talking about the equivalent of hundreds of billions, and it was just, there wasn't that money around it. Nobody had that sort of money. So it was a ridiculous request, and so to blame. But I thought, well, okay, you've got this time element. And he got in 1933, and he didn't start, the squeeze came gradually. All of these different addicts, so you can't work as a doctor, you can't work as a lawyer, you can't own this factory, you can't, it came in bit by bit. In Austria, and this was the thing with the Anschluss, it came in 3 months. So one day you're working normal, next day you can't work as a writer, or you can't work in a factory, or you can't work as
right.
So it was very quick. Oh, your son, he can't go to that school anymore. So this then gave it a thriller element because your life's changing. Every week it's changing. And there was the experience with Freud. I mean, he, in reality, he was able to get out with his wife and his young daughter, Sigmund Freud, but he had 4 elder sisters, and he couldn't save them. They all perished they all ended up, died in death camps.
I never knew that.
Yeah, so even with all of that, and he had letters from Salvador Dali and H.G. Wells, and a lot of famous people, but he could only save himself and his immediate family. He had to leave every bit of his wealth behind. He had to leave most of his letters behind. I think he was allowed to bring out one attaché case with whatever letters he could bring in that, and that was it.
Wow.
So it was very, very tough. And so, I put myself in that position of, well, okay, I'm a writer. How would it be if I was trying to get out? And, I'm not as famous as Sigmund Freud. How would it be for me? And I wanted the 2 cousins, one of the young writers, sort of, so you get this sort of exchange between them. You actually feel the tension. Well, hopefully you feel the tension.
Yeah, there was a phenomenon that used to frustrate me. I think now I'm coming to terms with it.
Uh-huh.
But you see the images of, tens of thousands of Jews lined up on a train platform and a handful of soldiers. And what always used to go through my mind is nobody said they can't kill us all. We can kill them. Well, some of us might die. Somebody's got to be the first, but nobody said they can't kill us all. But at the same time, and this is something I didn't think about way back when, the death camps at the time of the Anschluss and the earliest uh, uh, crimes against the Jewish population, there were no death camps, and any death squads or anything like that were going around, nobody could accept it as reality. They couldn't believe that it would happen. Even Jewish people, they didn't trust Hitler. He'd gone back on his word too many times, but nobody could believe that it would be that bad. So yeah, it's horrible. We're downtrodden. We're put upon. They're putting us on these damn trains. But it wasn't until late 43, people started to get word, no, you're not going to work on an apple farm.
I know. And that's why they stood in the queues so calmly. They didn't know they were going to their deaths. And I mean, when they arrived in Auschwitz, they were told. I remember, there was a scene. I can't remember which book it was, but one inmate was sharing with another. You'll be toast tonight. That's it. And they couldn't accept it. They, didn't even when they were told, and they could see the evidence, they couldn't believe it. And the Germans kept it quiet. I mean, the Wannsee conference, the whole thing, because I think, and this was something that historian Andrew Roberts brought up in an article, and it posed the question: were Hamas worse than the Nazis? And he wrote this angle from the point of view of yes. They definitely were worse than the Nazis, and his reasoning for this is that the Nazis, although they had this sort of mass program of killing Jews, they knew that the German public wouldn't go along with it, so they kept it quiet. The Wannsee conference was all kept quiet. The German public would accept them being shoved aside, get them out of our sight, out of our way, put them in these work camps or whatever. But they wouldn't have accepted a mass extermination program. Whereas with Hamas, and Andrew Roberts brought this up brilliantly, he said they knew that their public, the Palestinians in Gaza, the radicals who voted them in fun enough, more numbers than have voted Hitler into power in Germany, would actually applaud this. And so they filmed it on their GoPro cameras and they displayed it to the world. So, Andrew Roberts, from that point of view, said, yes, they are worse than the Nazis because of this factor. They had no shame about what we're doing. In fact, they were boasting and, oh, look at us, we're killing all these Jews, aren't we marvelous?
Yeah, and they actually got support around the world.
Yeah.
Which demonstrates how not just coarsened our societies have become, but wildly ignorant of the way we need to be thinking versus the way we are thinking.
I know. It's going to take a lot to change it. I mean, I don't know if Trump's plan of getting them all out of Gaza is going to work because there's so much resistance to that. But I think that in the end, you can't leave it to an Egyptian committee. I think in the end, if most of the Palestinians are going to stay there, you've got to run Gaza by a committee. And my proposal, which I've been putting actually in an article in a peace plan in a couple of weeks' time, is that you have a committee made up of, an American, an Israeli, because Israel's next door and their security needs to be. Yes, you have one Palestinian, you have an Egyptian, and then a Saudi, because the money's going to come from America and Saudi to build.
Correct, yeah.
And maybe somebody from the EU, I don't know. So 6 or 7 in a committee. But they've got to run the area with a tight grip. So if anyone says, oh, we're going to send some rockets over again, let's attack, the others are going to say, no, there's no way you can do that. That's gone. That is forgotten. That's history. And you have the same denazification program that you had with Germany. I mean, what happened with Germany is that they hanged all the leading Nazis and then everyone else was reprogrammed. No, you can't be a Nazi. You can't have that. You have to change all the textbooks in Gaza and in the Palestinian territory. You've got to change the teachers, and literally you've got to take over a whole you got a massive re-education program
Yeah,
as well.
we've already lost 2 generations there. We have to
Yeah,
repair that.
yeah. I mean, unless you get them into this stage of being a moderate
Yeah.
and living alongside Israel, and then just getting it, all that energy with digging tunnels and trying to kill it. If they put that all into, work and finance, and they could make it marvelous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it takes us a lot of work needs doing there. Or
We have to get the entire population vested in a new narrative and a new economy.
yeah,
Like you said, people have to be put in a position where they'll say, no, no, we're not doing that anymore. It'll ruin this new stuff we got,
yeah, I
this
know.
new great stuff. Um, and we haven't accomplished that. And so long as people remain in that rubble, living in that rubble,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know how we're going to accomplish it. There was talk about temporary relocation. I can understand the Palestinians saying, yeah, we don't buy that. But there's no other way to rebuild.
I
You
know.
can't have them living among that stuff. Just
Yeah,
think of the materials that are going to get broken up and put into the air. The chemicals, the hazmat,
yeah, yeah,
the asbestos, whatever nasty stuff they had hidden in the tunnels. That's all going to have to come out in a controlled fashion.
yeah. I mean, it's a big
Demolish it, and then rebuild. If we can't accomplish that, if we can't change the thinking on that level,
yeah.
Gaza will always be Gaza.
I mean, maybe that will be the idea. Look, you either all shift or most of you shift, or we've got to have this tight control situation where, what happened on October 7th and any form of terrorism can never happen again. And, complete control. And then what would happen is if you had a force in there that was made up of this group, it doesn't become a them and us situation because you've got Saudi and Egyptian police and yeah, you've got some Israeli and some American, but there's no common enemy. There's no them and us, and a very very tight control. And I think it's the only way it can work. But you can't just leave it with the Egyptians and the. I mean, as it is, the Egyptians have got problems with the Muslim Brotherhood, and their
Yeah.
level of control. And what would happen is
And
if
they're a pretty weak sister in any situation anyway.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's you can't just leave it to an Arab, um, sort of contingent to run Gaza anymore.
And I
But that's
think the other thing we have to do, and this will go over like a fart in church. Those billionaires living in Qatar who call themselves the leaders of Hamas,
yeah, yeah,
they're just people who have bilked Gazans of all their aid money, and they're living high on the hog off it.
I know.
That's the way Yasser Arafat, an Egyptian, made
Yeah,
his money off the Palestinians. Um, they have to be taken out of the equation
yeah. I
by
think
any means necessary.
yeah. I mean, I actually said initially that rather than the bombing Gaza, I felt they should have just gone after sitting in Qatar and now Turkey. There's some sitting there, and the same sort of operation you had after Munich that the
Right.
Israelis are really good at. You know, targeted assassinations all of. So the leaders, I mean, it's crazy because even now you've got a Hamas leader sitting in Qatar, and he does an open broadcast like we're doing now, but it's on Al Jazeera TV,
Right.
saying, "Oh yes, October 7th was glorious, and we can't wait to do it again and kill even more Jews." And I'm thinking, well, is he mad? I mean, he knows that Israel are itching to finish the job in Gaza, and it's almost like he's giving them the green light because
Mm.
he's saying, that's the threat. But maybe if it shifted and they said, no, wait a minute, we're just going to keep things calm in Gaza for now. We'll come up with a program later, but we've got our boys going out. They'll be at your hotel room, within the next week.
Right, right. It's counterintuitive to most people when you're in a situation like this. You say we have to take an extreme move on at least on these criminals in Qatar.
Yeah,
Um, it's just the reality of it. These guys are thugs. These guys are the same kind of people as the oligarchs that run Russia and Ukraine. These are the
yeah,
same ilk. They run the drugs, they run the gambling, they run the prostitution.
mm,
Yes, it all happens even in the Muslim world.
yeah, yeah.
And that's who these people are. We need to take them out. We need to put them in prison or
Well,
find
certainly
another way of disposing of
we could
them.
also freeze their funds. I mean, Qatar's got a lot of money in property in London, and I'm sure the same in the States. They've got money all over.
Yeah,
Freeze all their assets,
yeah,
close down Al Jazeera TV, unless they have more balanced um, programs. I mean,
right.
they had they had this thing on Al Jazeera TV. They were continually denying that there was how many Hamas members in Al Shifa hospital. And then suddenly they had this clip that they showed on, it was an Al Jazeera clip shown on their TV, and it went online. It was a YouTube clip. And the terrorists with their guns raised inside the hospital, and like this, it was it was only about a 50-second clip.
Mm.
And what happened is they realized their mistake and said, oh my God, we put this out, we shouldn't have, and they pulled it, but it was too late. That had
Yeah,
been
yeah,
picked up and it went viral. And of course, you suddenly realize, Al Jazeera, you can't believe a single word they say. It comes back to the old thing, and it's a terrible thing to say, when they sort of say, well, how do you know? How do when they protest, how do you know I'm lying? Because your lips are moving. I mean, it's,
right, right.
they continually lie. I mean, this denial now from Asa Winstanley and Jonathan Cook, who pushed the Palestinian line, that there's no evidence of atrocities on October 7th. I mean, that is not just a lie. It's well, I don't know.
It would if it wasn't about such a hideous thing, it would be laughable. It would
Yeah,
be laugh in your face, slap you, and call you an idiot kind of thing.
yeah,
But it is about a terrible thing.
I
And the
know,
troubling part is there's somebody who knows when he's saying it. He knows when the words are coming out of his mouth, it's a bunch of crap.
I know. They
But
know.
he's saying it anyway.
Yeah, but they've got a lot of supporters. This is the sad thing, and this is where, I mean, maybe I mean, we can't do it in the modern age, but in World War II, we took Lord Haw out at the end of the war, and we hanged him for making pro-Nazi broadcasts. And if Asa Winstanley and Jonathan Cook thought, wait a minute, we could end up getting hanged for this, uh, they might change. The crazy thing is, if Jonathan Cook was sitting in Gaza doing anti-Hamas broadcasts, he'd be dead within 2 days. He wouldn't
Correct.
last. And the same with all of them. So we've got free speech in the West, but they're sort of abusing the free speech laws by, well, just saying what they want, and it's causing a lot of problems. And it's
Yeah.
not just problems for Jewish people and Israelis. It's problems for normal Palestinians because, when there's a conflict, it's the normal Palestinians that are getting caught in the middle, and there are women and children being killed, not the numbers that Hamas are inflating it to, but there are innocent people getting killed, and Hamas know it, and they inflate those figures because they use that to get sympathy in the West.
Yeah, and they have no feelings for these people. They'll they'll use these people as sandbags.
Yeah, they just use them as so as much as it'd be terrible, you think, oh, putting Asa Winstanley or Jonathan Cook in jail, oh, that's clamping down on free. You think, well, hold it, just think of the number of Palestinian lives that would be saved. Because if Hamas weren't encouraged by all of this, support in the West, I don't think they'd have acted the way they have done. I think it would be a different sort of situation.
Yeah, if there was a uniform outcry from the civilized world, I think they'd have folded up their tents a lot sooner.
Yeah,
But they had that wall thumping, window licking president we had for 4 years,
yeah, yeah,
and we had uh, all the campuses lit up with anti-Semitism, pro-Gaza lunacy. In the United States, they got away with this so far. I hope they don't get away with it in the long run. Several universities had places taken over,
yeah, yeah.
and you had the Jewish entrances over here. Everybody else comes this way, but if you're Jewish, you go over here,
That's
and
crazy.
that's where you can go. Um, how long ago did we end that kind of shit in this country?
I know.
And here we are again. Here we are again.
No, I mean it's a tragic situation. I mean, we've got the. I mean, I'm hoping Trump does go hard on Colombia. And I mean, again, you had was it Huffington Post? They were very left wing, and they've come out with this argument that I can't remember the name of the student that they want to deport because of his activity, Palestinians
Yeah, Khalil. Yeah.
at Columbus. And they again they've come out with this same line. Oh, there's no evidence that he's ever supported Hamas or terrorist activity, and yet
We
he's
have
been
hours of video of it.
yeah, it's been blatant sort of Hamas of freedom fighters and the Israelis this and that, and they come out. Oh, there's no proof or no evidence, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I
But
feel
the good news with that is a lot of people are screaming, oh, no due process, freedom of speech, and all this stuff. Getting him out of the country, he's here at the pleasure of the Secretary of State. And
yeah,
we need no adjudication of any criminal actions or anything else to send him packing.
I know.
And I hope we do it again. Any student in this country who's supposed to be learning
Yeah,
but spends their semester out on the lawn screaming how rotten the United States is, off you go.
yeah, yeah.
Go home.
No, no, and I think that's the right tack. I mean, it's very difficult to get a visa to get into the States for anyone. So why they should be allowed to sort of stay when, there's sort of this agitation and disruption going on. Yeah, I mean it's great. I mean I've got actually on a laughable side, I've got this friend. He's actually a computer engineer. He's sort of got a microchip company, and he was going to Australia, and they're quite strict with immigration in Australia, and they sort of ask, and one of the questions he was asked he says, have you got any criminal convictions? And he goes, oh, he said, I didn't realise that was still a sort of requirement to get into it.
Yeah. For people who don't know their history, Australia was a prison country
That's
where,
right. Yeah,
where the Brits sent their undesirables.
you said all the convicts over there.
That's right. The way Venezuela did to the United States. Well, listen, I could go on and on about this stuff all day long. I hope you'll come back,
Okay, that'd be
especially
good.
if we have a big development, a lot to talk about. I'll call you.
Okay.
But in the meantime,
Yeah.
if you can send me links to all your books,
Okay.
I'll put up your Substack link below the video line for anybody
Okay.
who's watching, and I'll also uh, link to all your books. I'll drop them below the video line so people can start reading your thriller series, or
Okay.
definitely Vienna Writer Circle. If you have read Holocaust books and you found them interesting or infuriating, Vienna Writer Circle is a place where you need to spend some time.
Okay.
Definitely.
That's great. Now, thank you very much for having me on, Matt. I haven't rattled on too much about too many different things, but
No, it was great. It was great. It was great to have you, and I hope to have you back soon.
lovely. Thank you very much.